Good morning, everybody. We are going to do a live slash slightly recorded demo of painting at Nepenthe this morning. We recorded it because we couldn't actually be being live there. So this was recorded this morning just a bit ago, and wow, do I have an inspiration to work with. So what I am looking at is that silhouette of those blue mountains marching south with that incredible jagged coastline and the ocean below. And I'm working over an old canvas, a canvas that had a lot of qualities that I really liked, but I was ready to part with it and do something completely different. So on we go. And I do this a lot with paintings. Instead of trying to fix them, although I sometimes do that as well, I just simply allow them to become the underpainting for something else. And here what I'm doing is taking a thin, dark mixture of burnt umber and Prussian blue, thinned with a little bit of odorless mineral spirits and a touch of liquid, and actually scratch the liquid. It's just OMS plus a little paint. And I'm just creating the shapes, the outlines of the shapes, finding that composition that I'm looking at that looking south on that south coast view. I have been up since 5:30 this morning, and all night long was thinking about this painting. I kept waking up and thinking, oh, what is it going to be today that is going to be the new discovery of this painting? I've painted it hundreds of times. I've painted this view hundreds of times, and I never, ever feel like I know what I'm doing. I always feel like, how am I going to do it this time? What's the thing that's really attracting my eye and catching my eye? And before I started painting today, and I'm telling you all this because this is really as important as how big your palette is or what colors you're using or all of that, is what is it about what you're looking at that is just speaking to you? You know, this question of shape, this question of color, the values, the experience of the painting, the experience of the seeing, and how do you as a painter interpret that and bring that into your painting. So when I woke up in the middle of the night, and then again this morning when I was just sitting with a cup of coffee looking south, watching the way the light would filter through those mountains before the sun had actually risen, I just took it all in and felt it, felt that massive grandness of that shape against the sky and that coolness of those blue mountains, and then those darker silhouettes of trees against that ocean that's just reflecting the light of the sky. And I just took all of that in, and it's so simple. That's the thing about this particular view, this particular moment of space and time, is the simplicity. And it's so appealing to me to look at mountains and trees and water and waves and birds and all of these things that are part of this landscape and this experience, and try to find the simpleness, and in that simplicity find that awe, that awesomeness. So technically what I'm doing is I'm working with a really big palette. It's a 16-inch by 20-inch glass palette, which I've taped the edges off so that it's quite, soft. And I have my typical array of color that I use, the typical array of pigments that I use, that are very much traditional split complementary palette of titanium white, a cool yellow, a warm yellow, a cool red, a warm red, a cool blue, a warm blue, and burnt umber. And those are my go-to colors. And I spent about 20 minutes this morning mixing up secondary colors before I even came down to the terrace. Greens, yellow greens, blue greens, lighter greens, darker greens. And that's a practice that I have developed since I started painting. I probably spend a lot more time mixing color in advance than I did when I was a new painter. I've come to understand how quickly I like to move with the paint, and it's very helpful to have mixtures of colors that I have established some relationship understanding with on the palette before I put those colors down on the canvas. So I'll spend a lot of time developing color on my palette and then perfecting it on the canvas itself. So it looks like I already have this fabulous sky, and I really love that sky, and it's a real sacrifice to let it go. But in the interests of actually painting what's going on today, there are no clouds in the sky. This is a happy, sunny, beautiful July day, and there's atmospheric haze that is part of the sky, and atmospheric haze that's part of the separation between each mountain ridge and the one before and the one after. And there's that reflection of light in the water. So the old sky must go, and the new sky comes in. And here's a few things technically with painting over an old painting. You can prepare the whole surface with a retouch varnish and then simply paint your new painting. You can also simply paint with oil paint over oil paint a new painting, which is what I'm doing. And I am largely just creating a new color experience. I'm not really attempting to retain those colors from below in the new color, although they will in different places pop out and show up. So sometimes I really focus on letting that happen, and sometimes it happens by accident. Sometimes it doesn't happen at all. I'm using a technique here to bring the sky down to the mountain that I learned from Gregory Kondos, the great California painter who I studied with years ago. And he would literally grab my hand around the brush and have me grab it as close to the fibers of the brush as possible and drag it down across that space where the sky hits that mountain edge. And he'd go back over it again and again and again. And he delighted in confounding people who felt like you weren't allowed to do that, but he would do it consistently, and he taught me how to do it as well. If I need to go back in and change the color, change the value, change a transition, I just load up my brush with more paint and take a page from Gregory Kondos' book. So what I'm doing here again with a very large brush is I've lightened my color. I'm going in to lighten that separation between the one ridge and the other. Everything on the palette, everything on the canvas rather, every color that I'm using has a little bit of everything else in it. The greens, the reds, the blues, the yellows. Nothing is a pure pigment. Everything is a mixed color. And when you have a practice of working with a limited palette and you really use your palette to mix color, as opposed to just painting out of the tube and putting everything directly on the canvas, you will have a higher likelihood of having really harmonious color. And typically with the skies I paint, I will mix the color I feel the sky should be and then drag into it a little bit of every other color the green, the yellow, if there's red, and it's all about their proportion. It's all about how much of anything is in the paint to tell the story of that color. And as we wind down, I stop, I step away, I look, I leave, I wipe off my brushes, I back up, stand 8 feet away and look at everything from a distance. I find myself then going, where does it need a little bit more separation? Where does it need a little bit more brightness? Where does that edge where the sky meets the sea need to be tweaked just a little bit? And sometimes I'll take a perfectly decent painting and simply ruin it by going back in with those little grace notes that I'm hoping will improve something. And sometimes it's just what it needed. So it's really, I hear this all the time from my students who are despairing of, how do I get it right the first time? How do I paint quickly, impressionistically, expressively, and get it right? And it's like, well, you just do it a lot. You do it again and again and again, and you make mistakes. You make decisions that you later, maybe immediately, think were wrong. And the beauty of paint is you simply correct them. You simply notice that you made something too light, it should have been darker, or it was too warm and it should have been cooler, or you should have just left it alone. And when you notice that, you don't beat yourself up about it. You notice it and you say, oh, I need it to be X, Y, or Z. And then you make the change. Sometimes a painting will only allow you to go so far with all of that fussing and tweaking. And then you simply have to create a new painting. So this morning, as Tom is filming me painting this painting, this is the second painting of the morning. The first one I painted so quickly that by the time he had all of his video equipment set up, I'd already done it. And there was very little else to show or to talk about. And, painting really isn't a performative experience. It's a very internal experience. And you may require for yourself a lot of time with yourself in looking, reflecting, observing, making decisions, stepping back, and noticing what's happening, what's going on with this painting, and letting yourself really hum with it. Well, I've signed it using the back of my brush to scratch through that layer of paint. And then it's on to the fun part of cleaning up after yourself. So if you're a plein air painter and you're out there painting on location somewhere, it's really important, especially if you're in a public space like I am today, to prepare your space so that you aren't leaving traces of anything you brought, paint or solvents or what have you, behind. You want to really make sure you're not leaving anything behind, and all you're taking away is your beautiful painting. So I love this space so much, and want to be a good guest.